It's the BUNLEE game of the week, and I'm super excited for this one, guys. Hello, everybody. You're listening to the College Sports Super Fan, and today we've got a great one for you, an SEC matchup between number 6 Tennessee, number 15 Oklahoma, and Norman is going to be absolutely rocking. Head coach Josh Heupel of the Tennessee Volunteers is taking on his former team that he led to be 2,000 national champions as a quarterback for the Oklahoma Sooners under head coach Bob Stoops. So, a lot of fascinating history there. And what's also amazing about this one, or what's interesting about this one, I should say, is that the line has shifted. So, Oklahoma, a couple weeks ago, they started out as a 3.5 point favorite against Tennessee because they were both considered to be evenly matched, and Oklahoma was at home. Now Tennessee is a 7 point favorite. They went from a 3.5 point underdog to now a 7 point favorite. So that's a big shift. And that just shows how confident the bettors are now in Tennessee to go on the road and win this game. But is Tennessee really that dominant, or is it just because they've been playing very weak competition? I mean, Chattanooga is not a very good FCS team. And then Kent State was literally ranked number 134 out of 134 FBS Division One teams. So they literally are the worst team in the top level of the country. But Tennessee still beat them 71 to nothing. So that's nothing to take away, but it is just something to consider. Oklahoma hasn't faced the craziest of competition either. Tulane is pretty decent. Temple is really bad. Houston is not that great either, but they struggled to win that one. And I think that's why people have their concerns about the Sooners. But let's just talk about the Tennessee Volunteers roster a little bit real quick. Then we'll talk about Oklahoma's roster, some concerns for each team, my personal prediction, and then we'll get into BUNLEE's prediction, which BUNLEE was wrong for the first time last week. She picked Florida. I picked Florida also. That was a mistake. She picked Florida to beat Texas A&M. She chose the basil leaf over the blueberry, and she was hopping mad about it after that. Let's just say that. But Tennessee, let's get into their roster. Nico Yamalieva has been one of the best quarterbacks in the country as just a freshman, which is pretty crazy. 72% completion percentage, 698 yards, 6 passing touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. He also has 102 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. So he has some dynamic ability to his game. You also have to keep in mind he hasn't even been playing the whole game most of the time. He got pulled at the end of the first half against Chattanooga. He got pulled early against Kent State. So his numbers could be even higher than what they currently are. Dylan Sampson. Let me just rave about him as a running back for a second. He literally could be the best running back in the whole country. To me, he's the Doak Walker Award favorite with the numbers that he has right now. 357 yards, which is nearly 8 yards per carry, and 9 rushing touchdowns in 3 games. That is insane. I mean, some running backs don't even get that many touchdowns by the end of the season, and he already has that much in 3 games. The freshman running back, Deshaun Bishop, who's really emerged as a star as well, who's behind Sampson, he's got really good numbers. He's a Knoxville native as well, so a hometown kid. He has 222 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. So very impressive there. And then the receiver group is loaded. It's completely loaded. Nico's got a lot of great options. Dante Thornton has been the main big play guy. He doesn't have the most receptions. He's only got 5 catches this season, but he does have 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's the kind of guy who goes out on the edge and goes down for the big play because he's averaging a lot of yards per catch if you take 169 and divide that by 5. I think that's like 33 or so yards per catch. So definitely a big play wide receiver there. But you got Squirrel White, you got Brew McCoy, Chris Brazzell, who came in from Tulane. There's a lot of good options. And then James Pierce, who was a dominant defensive player last season. He doesn't quite have crazy stats so far, but he has hurried the quarterback at least 5 times this year. So he's still getting back there. He just doesn't have quite the crazy numbers yet. The Sooners, on the other hand, they've been pretty well balanced, and Jackson Arnold has been a very impressive quarterback in his own right, in my opinion. 484 yards, 7 touchdown passes, and only 2 interceptions, but also what he's done on the ground 159 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Jackson Arnold has been a much better runner than I think a lot of people give him credit for. And he's got a couple of really good running backs too. Javante Barnes has definitely been the main running back. He's been getting the vast bulk of the carries. He's got 126 rushing yards as well. But true freshman Taylor Tatum, keep an eye on him. He's been very impressive. He's gotten half of the carries that Barnes has. But in my opinion, he's almost been more impressive. 102 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a 9 yard receiving touchdown. So Tatum, he's been really, really good. And then you also got to look at the receiving core and Dion Burks, who comes over from Purdue. He's got 169 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. So he's been very, very good. But this receiving core is loaded. They got a lot of weapons. The shocking thing to me is sophomore wide receiver Nick Anderson, who I believe led the team in receiving touchdowns last year as a freshman. I mean, he was really, really, really good last year. He hasn't even made a single catch yet. So that just shows you how deep this roster is when it comes to the receiving core. That some players that were star receivers last year don't even have any numbers this year, which was shocking to me when I was doing research on this team. On defense, Brent Venables has made the Oklahoma defense much better. And the Lincoln Riley, well, also he had Alex Grinch as defensive coordinator, so that didn't help. But the Lincoln Riley era at Oklahoma, the defense was always, always a concern. Now it isn't with, now it isn't as big of a concern now thanks to superstars like Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman, who have been fantastic. They've each been just tackling machines. So that's been really, really good for them. Let's get into some of the series history before I talk about my concerns for each team and then who I think is going to win this game. Oklahoma leads the all-time series 3-1. So you wouldn't have thought it, but these two teams have actually played each other 4 times before. The first time they ever met was 1939 in the Orange Bowl. This is Tennessee's only victory over Oklahoma, way back in 39, where they won 17 to nothing. But what's fascinating is the next Orange Bowl that they would play in 1968. Tennessee was actually the 1967 national champion. So back in those days, they declared the national champion just based on the regular season alone. The bowl games had nothing to do with it at all. Could you imagine if that was the case today? Literally nobody would play in the bowl games at all. You think it's bad now. I mean, the bowl games literally used to be just meaningless. They were just played just for fun, just to get a cool trophy, get to go to a cool city like Miami. It was meant to just be just a fun thing. So Tennessee already was the national champions, but Oklahoma went into the Orange Bowl and beat Tennessee 26 to 24, which is one of the many games kind of during that era in the 50s, 60s, in the early 70s where they finally said, okay, we need to allow the bowl games to help determine the national champion because it's very embarrassing to pick a national champion and then have them lose in the bowl game. So they decided they should not do that anymore. Then they played in a home and away in 2014 and 2015, and the 2015 matchup in Knoxville was a very good game. Oklahoma won that game in a 31 to 24 thriller. So, and of course, they won the 2014 matchup as well. So they've played each other relatively recently. There's been some close games, a lot of fascinating history. Now, let me get into the concerns for each team. So, the concern for Tennessee here here's what I'm worried about with the Volunteers. They've had it a little too easy. Yes, I know that's kind of a silly concern to have, but sometimes it's good to face just a little bit of adversity to see what your team is really made of, to see what they can overcome. Tennessee's just had it a little bit too easy. That and they've been committing way too many penalties. They've committed at least 5 penalties in each of their 3 games, and it's amounted to 18 penalties in just 3 games. Even against bad teams like Chattanooga and Kent State, they were still committing dumb penalties. So that is a huge huge concern for me with Tennessee there, is that these penalties could put them behind the sticks and cause them to lose a close game. The concern for Oklahoma, though, the pass defense has not been that great so far. And Houston, with Donovan Smith at quarterback, really exposed the Sooners and how much work they still have to do on the secondary. Now they're going up against one of the best young quarterbacks in the country. Yes, he's young, but he's been very impressive so far, and he's got a very impressive receiving core as well. So that is my main concern with Oklahoma in this one. Here's my prediction. This is Oklahoma's first ever SEC matchup as an SEC conference team. They want to prove something. They want to prove that they belong in the toughest league in the country, in the SEC. In my opinion, this is probably going to be the hardest Oklahoma is going to play all season, besides the Red River game in a couple of weeks against their arch rival, number one, Texas, there in Dallas. Besides that game, this will probably be the second most hardest they're going to play all season, regardless of opponent. This is it. This is their first game as an SEC conference foe. They want to make a statement. They want to upset a team. Their home environment's going to be crazy. It's going to be late at night. It's going to be rocking. So I think this absolutely is going to be tough. It's going to be very, very close. But I just think Tennessee has too much. They've just been too dominant, and they have too many weapons. I think they're not going to dominate this game at all. I think it's going to be very, very close. But I think Tennessee survives and wins this game by 3. Does just enough to come away with a victory. They faced quite a bit of adversity, kind of like Georgia did going on the road against Kentucky, where they only beat Kentucky by 1. That was a shocker. I think Tennessee goes on, kind of faces a similar sort of scenario, but because they've got more talent, they'll come away winning, and they'll win this game by 3. All right, guys, now we're going to see what Miss BUNLEE picks. Can BUNLEE be redeemed? Is she going to pick Texas or Oklahoma? We're going to find out, Tennessee or Oklahoma, excuse me. We're going to find out soon with BUNLEE's pick. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching the College Sports Superfan.
Hello, Miss BUNLEE. Are you ready to make your predictions here? Oh, Miss are you ready? Hopefully you'll end up right this time. These are the 2 choices. The orange pepper to represent Tennessee, and the red pepper to represent Oklahoma. All right, Miss BUNLEE, make your selection. Oh my goodness. Second. Oh my goodness, she picks Tennessee. Wow. She had 2 juicy peppers right here, and she picks the Tennessee Volunteers for the second time this season. Thank you all so much for listening to the College Sports Superfan. BUNLEE has made her choice, and that's Tennessee once again. We'll see if she is right this time and can improve to 3-1 on the season.